Hi everyone, it's Divinity back again. I just thought I would redo the video that we did earlier on the Facebook Live. Thanks to technology, it does happen. So I want to just redo it and do it in a seamless way. So then for those who want to watch the replay, you're not worried about the cutting out and all that fun stuff that went with it. So I'm going to start all over again and do one that's going to be straightforward and even. Let's begin. So, of course, if you guys want to know a little bit about me, my name is Divinity. I started off painting when I was pretty young. Everyone started with Crayola wax crayons, drawing on the walls, and that's how I started. And I loved it so much that I became a working artist. And now I've taught with Paint Night about 500 events. I also taught watercolor classes as well at a local community center. So that's about 500 classes I've done. Paint your pet, a regular canvas painting, ceramics such as wine glasses and wine bottles, and of course watercolor classes for beginners. And so this led me to doing some holiday cards just for the holidays that I wanted to do of different subject matters. I could show you briefly of these cards that I've done that I want to teach, and that I've created some online tutorials that you guys can check out at divinityart.square.site, and I'll talk about these a little later, but let's get painting. So let's talk about supplies that we have here. We've got our 2 containers of water, one for the first rinse and one for the final rinse. I got my painter's tape. If you don't have painter's tape, masking tapes also works as well. Just be mindful that it's going to be a little more tackier than the painter's tape. If it finds it is, just pull the piece that you want, the size you want, and just kind of go onto your skin, and that will make it less tacky because it's going to pick up that skin. Or you can put it on your clothes, and that will pick up some lint from your clothes, which will reduce the tackiness of your tape. So that's optional. I have my 2 things of paints here. This one comes from a tube that squeezes out onto this pan, and these are just pan filled paints. For me, either way works. I don't have a preference between one or the other. I just like to use them, so use whatever works. I know certain artists tend to gravitate to certain ones. For me, I'm fine either way. I have my masking fluid, or this is called drawing gum. I call it frisket because that's what I've been trained to call, but usually art store will recognize as drawing gum or masking fluid. Of course, we have our Strathmore watercolor cards. These comes in a pack of 10, 50, or 100. So depending on how many cards you want to do, you might want to grab the amount that you need. What's great about these is it's not only for watercolor paint, but also it has envelopes, which saves some having to go run out to get some. I have carbon paper or graphite paper that we can use to trace the design on our cards. A palette that we will need for our paints and for our frisket. HB pencil and a white eraser. And I have 3 brushes here. A watercolor brush number 8. You don't have to have the exact size, something close to it. A number 4 round, and some other brush that I don't really care for the bristles. It will get slightly damaged because the first gets pretty gummy. And so then I have my card here. I have the design that we want to make our own version of. I have my cardboard paper here, my cardboard piece that's going to be used to hold down our card onto. And I just got this 8.5 by 11 paper. I just folded it in half. I got a piece of painter's tape on the edge, which I'm going to replace today, so let me do that today because I've used it a few times, and that's going to help protect our side of the paper. So here we go. I got my card here. I'm going to place it down, and we're going to put we're going to trace our image on there. So right now I have it on tracing paper. What I've done is I traced it from the printout. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip it to the back and trace it on the back. So that when we put it on here, just going to position it here, we can transfer whatever lead that we place in the back onto our card. Now, if that doesn't work, you can always get the printout, tape it onto your card to make sure it fits. grab your carbon paper or graphite paper, and then just do your outlines there. Now just remember, don't press too hard, otherwise you can create dents. So press firmly but not hard, that you're gonna create these dents that you cannot erase ever. So just be mindful of that. So just to speed up the process, I already have one that's been traced already, and here it is. So I'm gonna tape this one down, and I'm just gonna grab my painter's tape, and it's gonna tape it down. Now I'm gonna take about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. So that's about 1/4 inch. Now if you want to grab a ruler to measure it, you can. So I have a ruler over here. And then you can just grab a pencil and just measure 1/8 all the way, oh wait, sorry, 1/4 all the way around this edge, and we'll just tape it down. Not only this is going to create a nice border, but it helps to tape it down to our cardboard here. What's nice about it, then I can just use the cardboard to move rather than using the card to move. We're going to be using a lot of paints on it, so it will buckle, and it's going to help it from buckling. I ran out of green tape, so I'm going to go into my blue tape. I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And I have some extra tape here that I'm going to use. I used it from another event. And 1/4 of an inch there. Perfect. Now I'm just going to make sure I'm going to press on the edge that's on the card, because I don't want water to go underneath of it. So I want to make sure that's protected, creating a nice border. Now here's my card, this piece of paper. Now I am left-handed, so I want to make sure that this side of the card is protected. If you're right-handed, it might not bother you so much, but you know what? Just for safety measures, we'll just put it on the left-hand side. I'm just going to grab a piece of tape here. It's going to tack it to this edge, just like so. And I'm just going to tape it right butt against this fold line, right there. And I'm going to make sure to press so no paint goes underneath there. And now we are ready to paint. Now the first thing we're going to do is going to go and add our frisket. And the frisket is going to go into the ornaments. And what that's going to do is that we can paint around on top of it and not worry about the ornaments being affected by it. Now, if you don't have masking fluid or frisket, you don't have to worry about it. You can always paint around it. I just find that it's a lot more easier to have the masking fluid around, so then I can paint on top and not have it affect the paper underneath, so then I can paint these ornaments on top. Because watercolor is translucent, so we don't want the colors underneath to affect the top. So I'm going to just grab my brush that I don't really care for, open my masking fluid or frisket. Now you can paint directly from the bottle onto here. I just find that it's on the thick side, so I like to water it down just a little bit, and it just makes it spread much easier. So I'm just going to grab my brush that I don't care for and put some in here. Now I'm just going to mix a bit of water into it, not too much, just a little bit. So maybe 1/3 of what you've got of water, or maybe 1/4 of it. So here's my brush. It's going to go and add a bit of water. I'm just going to mix that there. And I'm just going to paint this frisket, masking fluid, in the ornaments. We had a lot of trouble with Facebook Live, so I'm just going to redo this video so that you guys can watch it seamlessly. And of course, because we're doing this on video, you can watch this anytime that you want. You can watch the whole thing first to get a feel for what to expect, or you can do one step at a time, or you can paint alongside me. So there is my ornament. And so now we're gonna go and grab the blow dryer. I forgot to mention about the blow dryer. You will need a blow dryer. Just gonna make sure I got all those areas. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna give my brush a rinse, get rid of any stuff. You'll find that it's gonna be gummy on your brush, so I usually will pick up the extra frisket that's dried on there and just push it off to the side in the garbage. And now, after I'm done, I'll just get some soap and water and just rinse it off there. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I need to wait for this to dry, so I'm gonna just grab the blow dryer and give it a good dry. Looks pretty good, pretty dry. So I'm gonna start working on the background of the green here. I'm gonna be using a sap green that's already included in my kit. If you do not have a green, I'm just gonna take that down. If you do not have a green, you can always make a green by using blue or blue and yellow. Probably recommend using ultramarine and a lemon yellow or cadmium yellow. But if you have a green on your kit, use that. That works perfectly fine as well. Now I'm gonna go into my number 8 brush. I'm gonna grab some water. I'm gonna go add some water into my sap green, which is in here. Now I want a light version of the green. I don't want it too dark. So I'm gonna add lots of water and let's paint. And how do I know if it's not too dark? I'm just gonna grab a card. That looks pretty light, because dark would look like this. Hopefully you guys can see the difference. So that's pretty dark, right? So this is more pigment and this is less water. This has more water and less pigment. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm gonna go and in there, I'm gonna add make some light green, light sap green. And I'm just gonna go and just add it to the background of my card. Now, because I have masking fluid, it's gonna protect what's the paper underneath. So I'm just gonna go on top. Now, if you don't have that, just be careful not to go into the ornament. So see, I can go in here and not worry about it. And there is done. So what I'm going to do right now is going to go get the blow dryer and blow dry it. Have some green. I'm just going to pop it in here. Drops of green. There. So before I do that, I'm just going to go and make sure there's no blobs of paint, because it can happen because water can pool on your paper. So I'm just going to give my brush a good rinse. I got my rag here. It's going to make sure it's pretty dry, because I'm going to use that as a sponge to soak up any blobs of paint that I may have on my card. Because that way when I dry, not only will it dry faster, but I don't have blobs of paint being pushed across the card, and that would suck. So here we go, another round of drying. And we are done. So this should be dry, should be bone dry, because if it's wet, they want the colors to move together or blend together. So which you'll experiment when we do the wet on here, and you'll see why we don't want the colors to be. They want the colors to be dry before you start moving to do some fine lines. So right now, the next thing we're gonna do, we're still gonna be using our sap green. We're gonna use a darker green, so we're just gonna add more pigment and less water. I'm just gonna add some pine needles to our branches. So I'm gonna grab my number 4 brush, go into my sap green. I'm just gonna add a bit more color and a bit more water because we're gonna need quite a bit. And I'm gonna make it pretty dark green. All I'm doing is adding a lot more pigment to this. Now I'm going to cut off right now. Now if you're using 2 paints, I'm just going to grab this green. Now if you're using 2 paints and you're not using a pen like I am, you can just grab a tube and just pour out just a tiny bit. I'm just doing that as an example. So there is my 2 paint, and I'm just going to add some water. I'm just going to use that and dilute it. Right, so that'd be the lighter version, and if you want a darker version, you just add a lot more paint and less water, and that makes it darker. So let me demo that again. So this is lighter, and just add more paint, makes it darker. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's a different way of grabbing your paint from the tube versus from the pan. So I'm gonna go into my pan now because I'm still using sap green. I'm just gonna go and do the pine needles. I'm using my number 4 brush. Now if you wanna use if you wanna use a number 8, you can. It's just gonna be a little wider needles. I want something a little fine, so I'm just gonna use my number 4 to do this. Now I'm going to go into different angles here. It doesn't have to be the same angle, because nothing in life is going the same way. Everyone's going this different ways. I guess that's why it gives us different personalities. So you can see I can go paint over my mask area. If you don't have that, just be careful not to go in those areas. That's all it is. I had a little trouble with Facebook, so just want to do this so then it's for those who are watching the replay or this video, then it's going to run pretty smoothly. I am going to move a little quickly, so if that's okay, if I'm going too fast for you, just stop, pause, and just click play again when you're ready to move on to the next step. There is quite a bit of drying time, so be sure to have a good dryer nearby. And when you're painting, make sure you don't have big blobs of paint. Otherwise, it's going to blow your paint across the card. Now, if you're painting this on your own, you know it's Christmas, so I don't know if you want to play some Christmas music in the background. I didn't play anything on the live because I know Facebook will shut the live down if they hear any music, especially with the lyrics. So I was kind of careful not to do that. So there you go. You'll find this pretty meditative. Now I use the makeup term for ladies because most of the people I teach are females, especially at paint night. It's like doing eyeliner with the cat eyes. So you're just using the tip of the brush to make those nice thin lines here. Now I'm just going to go give it a quick blow dry, and then we're going to add some darker green to give it a little more definition. Just some the odd highlights. So it looks pretty dry. So I'm gonna go into my, make sure it's pretty dry to touch. Now I'm just gonna go back into my green. And what I'm gonna do is gonna go put some in this palette here. Now if you already have green in there, I'll do a demo as well for that. So I'm just gonna go and add some green. I'm going to go and add some phthalo blue. So there is my green right there. I'm still using the sap green. So I'm using the sap green and the phthalo blue. So I got some phthalo blue on here. I'll use this one instead. It's going to grab a little bit. Just need a little bit, not a lot. Blue will conquer and dominate a lot of the colors. And I'm just going to mix it with this color here. It's going to make a different kind of green. And it's going to add some definition to our needles. Now, of course, if you don't like this particular color green, you can always use ultramarine instead. Now, if you're using the tube, let me do a quick demo of the tube as well, because I know not everyone's using the pen like I am. If you are using the tube, then, so this is, say this is the tube that you were using, the green that you're using. You're just gonna grab some phthalo blue. I'll use it from this pen here. I'm just gonna drop it into this well here, and I'm just gonna mix it. And that will create a little bluish green. You guys can see that. So that's the same thing, sort of the same thing, just dropping in some water and just mixing it up. So if you're using the tube or the pen, that's how you can do it. I'm just gonna finish this off. After we do this, we're gonna give it another dry. And then we're gonna be working on our branches. Now this is pretty meditative, so if you feel like you wanna add more needles, go for it. If you want to add a little less, that works too. There. So now I'm going to rinse my brush, go into my yellow ochre, and we're going to go into the branches. So I'm going to grab the blow dryer again, give it a good dry, because we don't want the green to blend in with the yellow ochre. I know this is still wet, so I'm going to leave that alone because it's going to take a while to dry. Now, if you're doing a batch of them, like a bunch of them, I recommend doing one thing at a time. So like assembly line, do the outlines all at once, do the branches all at once, do the needles all at once, because by the time you've done at least 5 of them, usually the first one is pretty dry. So I'm just going to tape that down. It's lifting up. I'm going to tape that down there. There. Making sure it's all secured. Now I'm going to go into my number 4, and I'm going to go into my yellow ochre. And I don't know where there we go. Perfect. My yellow sign's right there. My yellow ochre is right over here. So I'll just go and paint the branches yellow ochre. Now I am in the Pacific Northwest, so it's a pretty wet day, wet evening today, so it's kind of a good day to be indoors painting. And there is our first set of branches. I'm going to go into my burnt umber. I'm just going to go add a layer of dark brown, just right smack underneath the yellow ochre. It's going to blend in a little bit with the yellow ochre. That's perfectly fine. Just going to go straight underneath of that. So we still have the yellow ochre on top, and just adding just a smidgen of burnt umber underneath. There. And we will be blow drying this next little bit. So before we do that, I'm just going to go into my ivory black. Rather than doing it last, let's do it right now, because since we got to blow dry anyways, it'll be easier when we get to the ornaments. So I got some ivory black here that I poured in here and out of the tube and dried. The reason why I did that is because this kit doesn't have ivory black in it, and this kit's kind of convenient because if I do go traveling, I just carry this, which is smaller than my iPhone, and do some painting outside of home, whether it's outdoor plein air or in class or at someone's place. Now I'm just gonna go and do my little line like that and hook up to the tree. So using my number 4 brush, I'm using the tip. Like that, and the line. There we go. Now if your branch is not dry, then wait till it dries a little bit, but my branch is dry, so I've been able to put the black on top. Now I'm going to go and do a final blow dry before we start working on the rest of the painting. Just noticing how fast this painting is drying up. As you get more familiar with painting with watercolors, I do recommend trying with different kinds of gonna add some definition to branch while I'm talking. Different kinds of paper. Each paper behaves pretty differently. The paper we're using for the cards is called Strathmore, and they use a different kind of paper than what I'm used to, which I usually tend to use Arches. So try experiment. So we got the pine needles. If you want to add more definition, you can. Just for the sake of the video, I'm just going to move on to the next step, but take your time on each step. You don't have to move as quickly as I am right now. As you can see, you can always pause the video, take your time, start again, and just play with it and have some fun. So now I'm going to start working on the ornaments. I'm going to work on this one right here. Now I'm going to go around the line that we created. I'm just going to use my white eraser. I'm just going to go and pick up the masking fluid. I'm gonna go around my this ornament here and do that. Now I'm not pressing hard. I'm just pressing pretty firmly to the point where I'm not affecting the texture of the paper, because it can flatten it, but enough to pick up what's underneath. Pick up the masking fluid. I'm finding that most times it's kind of hard to think, talk, and do. And then I'm just going to pick up these little bits and just put it onto the side. It's going to go in the garbage can. So you can always use your hand to get a feel for it, to see if there's any bits that's left over. Now as you can see, it went into my circle, so I'm just going to go with a pencil and just make sure I got my circle intact. There. So that means I'm going to go be painting around it. Okay, so we're going to be following what I've created right here. I'm going to go add some Alizarin Crimson with some red, and then some blue on this side as well. Now you don't have to do the exact same color combination. If you want to use something different, feel free. That's entirely up to you. If you want to follow along, go for it, just to get some practice, to get a feel for it. That's perfectly fine. Now I've accidentally picked up some mask from this ball here, so I'm going to avoid this area because it's exposed, because if I start wetting it, the paint's going to go into there, which I don't want. What's great about watercolor, the paint's only going to go where there's water. Now I'm going to grab my number 8 brush, and I'm going to paint with water into the red ornament or whatever color ornament you want. Like you see, I'm going around this ball right here, like so. And there's our water. Now you don't want it too damp. You want it damp but not too wet. You want enough water for the pigment to move. Perfect. So there we go. And we're going to pick up some Alizar Crimson, which I have on this palette right here. Just going to go and add some water. And I'm just going to drop it. And you can see how the paint just spreads. Now it's only going to spread wherever there's water. So it's not spreading into these areas because it's not wet there. It's just staying put. So which means I need to get some water in these areas right here. Because I can tell it's not going there, which means I'm missing some water there. So if you need to push it along, push it along. And let us do its magic. So there. Now I'm gonna go and drop in some, I have Pearl Red Light, which is this one. It doesn't have to be this particular color. It could be like basically a red color. Christmassy red. I'm just gonna drop that. You can see how it spreads. You know, I can even drop it in the color. And let us do its thing. Now I'm just going to get a nice clean brush. I just rinsed it off. I'm just going to kind of tap it along. Tap, 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 tap. Kind of like a push it in there. There. Now I'm going to paint the bottom part. Phthalo blue. I have some over here, so I'm going to grab some phthalo blue. And I'm just going to drop it in there. So you can see the paint will only go where the water is. So because I only put water on here, it's not coming into this ball right there. So that's something to be aware of the characteristics of watercolor. And I'm just going to tap it in there. And with a clean brush, it's going to tap, 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 tap. Now then, I'm going to show you another option. So if you're happy with what you've got right here, then you can add more pigment, drop it in. Add some red. I'm just going to go with a brush. Just going to pick up some puddles of water because I want to blow dry it. So I'm just going to dry my brush and use this as a sponge. I'm just going to pick up any big blobs of paint of water. I know it's starting to pool in here because the paper is starting to warp. I'm just going to pick that up right there. Now, if you want to do the salt technique, now's a good time to do it because then you could do it on the blue one instead. So what I was normally going to do is going to blow dry it and then put another layer of color and then blow dry, and that'll be it. So then we can move on the blue one. But if you want to do some water technique, which I won't do on this one, but I'll do on the blue one because it takes 10 minutes to dry. So if you want to use some salt, you would sprinkle some salt, which I'll demo on the blue one. So say I have this, say I got this water, and then I would sprinkle some salt like I did with here. Now, once you sprinkle salt, it does take about 10 minutes or so to dry. Once it's dry, you just rub off the salt, and then you get this nice, awesome, fun texture that's happening there. So I'm not going to do it on this one because I do want to show you one way of doing it, and then we'll do the other way on this one. But once you put a bit of salt, you do have to wait about 10 minutes to dry-ish, depending on how much water you've got. And then once it's dry, you can rub off the salt, and then you get this nice fun texture. So I'm just gonna go into my hair blow dryer. I'm just gonna dry it off. So you got options here. If you find that you find the first layer of paint is not enough, you can always add another layer of paint. What you can do is just go with your number 8 brush, wet it again. And then do what we did for the first layer, was drop in some more color. Now, if you did do the salt, then you can't really do anything. That's basically it. You might be able to add more layers on top because it is translucent, so you might be able to play with it. So there we go. So I'm gonna go and add in some Alizarin Crimson. I'm gonna just drop that in there. Just gonna make the color bolder, if that's what you like. Maybe I don't like the red here, so I'm gonna cover it with the Alizarin Crimson. Kind of blend that in there. Maybe I'll just bring some of that over here. Just be mindful not to try to prevent any puddles that may be happening. And I'm gonna go and get some phthalo blue. And drop that in there too. Pop up the color a little bit. And then maybe I might smooth out the edges here. There. Kind of reminds me of Pepsi at this moment. The Pepsi logo. And if you want to bring back the red, you can do that. So I'm just going to go and blow dry it for time's sake. So I'm just touching it to make sure it's completely dried. Feels like it's okay. So now I'm going to start getting the eraser now. And it's going to go and erase this part of the ornament. Now, if you are an artist and you probably have rubber cement remover, what do I mean by that? If you have something like this that you can find in art stores, you can always do that as well. Use that as an alternative. Now, if you do end up erasing your lines, which can happen, you can always bring back the tracer and then bring back the lines. So we've done a lot of technique here. We've done light washes, which is the light green in the background. We've done line work. We've done layer and color on top of color, like the yellow ochre with the burnt sienna, yellow ochre and for the burnt umber. Now we're doing wet on wet, and then we're gonna throw in some salt. Now I'm just rubbing it pretty lightly, not firmly, but not heavy, that I want to lose the texture of the paper, because that's what can happen. Some paper, when you shop for watercolor paper in general, you're gonna find different kind of surfaces. You're gonna find cold press, smooth, a hot press, and really rough press. Rough means it's gonna have a lot of texture to it. Depending on the kind of painting you do, that's perfect for it. cold press is more like an in-between between a hot press and a rough press. So there's some texture, but not a lot of texture. And of course, you can tell by the name of hot press, it's going to be pretty flat. And I notice when I work with something like that, the water spreads, even though there's no water, it just goes on its own. So with the cold press, you do have a bit of texture in it, so it does prevent the water from going. Generally, the hot press is used for more of a pen and ink kind of environment. I've never used it because I like a bit of texture. So there we go, it's all erased. I get some little bits there. Excellent. Okay, so we're ready to go. Now I've got the blue and yellow. If you do not have the blue and yellow, you don't have to use it. Use those colors. You can use whatever color you want, whatever you're attracted to. So we're gonna go back to my number 8 brush. We're gonna do the same what we did there. We're gonna do wet, no wet. So I'm just gonna go and paint with just plain water. And I'm gonna go into my circle. If you've lost your circle, go back to your tracer and trace it on there again. So I'm just kind of moving my board around, seeing where it is, because I want to make sure it's wet. Okay, so I've got my nice my circular circle here. I don't want it too damp or tons of piles of water. There. So I'm going to start with yellow. I know I started with blue on the other side, so I'm going to start with yellow. Generally, I like to start with light colors first, rather than dark colors, because dark colors tend to dominate pretty quickly. So I'm going to go with yellow. I know in the Facebook Live I went the other way. So I'm just going to drop in some yellow. Now this particular paint, you can tell that the paint's not spreading as easily as these particular paints do. So as you become more experienced, you'll find out which paints work for you and which one doesn't. And because it's the holidays, there's gonna be a lot of Christmas kits on sale, Christmas art kits on sale. So definitely start getting your wish list going, or maybe go out and get a kit for yourself and try to experiment to see what you like. So you can see the blue just wanted to spread, the yellow kind of spread but kind of stayed put. So I'm going to tap that in there. Now because we're going to be doing salt, I'm going to be a little bit heavy on the pigment, because I know we're not going to be doing another layer of color. Now this card is first of its series. I've designed 9 watercolor cards. And I finished creating the online tutorials, so it's going to be on YouTube, which means you can watch it and play it in the comforts of your own home. If you want to do a little girls' night out, a little party, grab the girls and do a little card making party, you can always grab the tracer and print it out, because right now the picture is set at 5x7 size. If you can adjust your printer to print it a little larger to 8.5x11 or a little bit larger, then you can do it as a painting that you can give to your friends and family. Something to think about. Grab your aunts and cousins and sisters and best friends and just paint together. That's perfectly fine. So I've got 9 other cards. So if you want to check that out, you can. The website is https://divinityartsquare.net. So definitely check that out. I am offering a discount at 20% off if you get 2 or more classes. And you could do this tutorial as many times as you need. So this time I'm going to be a little bit heavy on the pigment, only because we're going to be doing a bit of salt. I like to layer colors on top of layers. Gives it a really nice soft look. I'm just going to rinse my brush. I'm going to go into my cadmium yellow because I played around with enough phthalo blue. There. I'm going to add a bit more water to this because what's going to happen is I want to add some salt, but not so much that I got puddles of water. No, we don't want that happening. I'm just going to go in here and do that. There. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do, because this is the final step, unless you want to go in there and do any fixing, that's totally optional. I'm going to find my salt, which is right here. Just regular salt, nothing too special. I know I've heard other artists make comments about using different salts create different results, so definitely experiment with that. These are just table salt. I know there's flaky salt, which is going to create a wholly different texture. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit. I'm not just going to sprinkle a lot, just a little bit. Just a little bit. And mainly focus on the wet areas. There. So I'm not sure if you can see this or not. So I just sprinkled on just a little bit, not a lot. We wanted to absorb the water and leave behind some marks. So this is what I've done here as a demo. I painted some Alzar Crimson color here. I put some salt, and you see some of the salt clustered up together. It takes about 10 minutes to dry-ish, depending on how much water you put and what kind of paper you've got. But once it's completely dry, you just rub off the salt, and this is what usually leaves behind. Now it depends on how you do it. It does take a little practice and technique. Sometimes it doesn't work the first time, so you might have to do it again. So you can kind of see on this demo here that I've got some salt things going on and quite a bit here. You can see there's still some salt that's still dried on that I wasn't able to get. But yeah, so you can totally see the difference between that and this. Creates a nice rough texture, and this is kind of smooth. So that's what I'm hoping to create with this particular one here. So once you're done, you can just lift off the tape. I'll do it carefully while the blue is still drying. I can't blow dry it, unfortunately. The salt's gonna have to do its thing, so we have to leave it alone. I suggest putting it off to the side and work on another painting, but because of this is a video, I want you guys to see what the result looks like, and just being very careful here. And this is what it looks like when your guys are done. So then, of course, once it's dry, if you want to go into the other areas and paint away, you can, making adjustments, that's perfectly fine. I suggest you do that before you lift off all the tape, but that's totally optional. So that's it. This is the finish of the full ornament card. If you put salt, wait for it to dry and then pick up. If you didn't put salt and just want to do what we did here, then you just get the blow dry and blow dry it. So that's an option. I want to give you some options to play with because I know we like certain things, and I just want to give you guys a chance to see what works, what's out there. So if you have a great time, if you want to come out, check out my other cards. I'll just show you what I've made. So of course I got the Beach Bum Pineapple, the Santa Hen sunglasses. I got the Flamingo Party, kind of a fun one using different techniques for this one. A lot of line work, a lot of shading, the scarf, the earmuffs, and the lights that's going throughout. Of course, something traditional. I call it cones and berries, the pine cones and the berries there with the needles. With this last painting we just did, this should be a piece of cake. Of course, no holiday is about a bit of joy. So we did some line work for the wreaths. The same line work here that's happening for the star wreath. So if you really like that kind of work, this is perfect for that. This is the shiny star topper. Same pine needles and a little different, a little more challenging work, but then we have the wash in the background. Of course, no holidays without a decadent treat. Whipped cream, chocolate drips coming down over the sides of the cup. And of course, we've got the Sitka tree ornament, fairly similar to what we did today. The only thing different is we're going to be adding the trees there. So very similar to wet on wet. So we're just using the Alzar Crimson and the yellow, so just placing it differently. The blue needles instead of the green ones. and I'll teach you how to do the Sitka trees and the birds in the tutorials. So I hope you had an amazing time, and I want to thank you for being here. If you do want to check out the site to see if you are interested in checking out these cards, it's divinityart.square.site. And the promo code, if you do want to get a discount, is listed on there. But in case it isn't, it's ART20 to get the discount if you order 2 or more classes. So thanks very much for being here with me, and be safe.